Everybody, this is going to be the final video I make for the tournament that I wrapped up on Saturday for the end of my Age of Sigmar League. If you watch the battle reports, you will know how I did. If not, I would advise you to go watch those games so that what I'm about to talk about would make a little more sense to you. Spoiler warning, did end up going 2-0 and getting first place in the tournament, which was awesome. So right off the bat, I'll start with army list comparison. My list, I think Kananruk is one of the best lists in the game. I think it's easily top 3, along with Skyfires and Aether Strike for Stormcast Eternals. Pure Sylvaneth used to be in there, but I think they've fallen off a little bit now that people have kind of figured out what their deal is, and they also have really bad matchups into both Aether Strike and Skyfire spam, so that kind of hurts them in the metagame a little bit. So I'm obviously taking a very powerful list against some lists that are definitely not on that same power curve. I think the Skaven list from round 1 has some definite potential there. I really like the ability to skitter leap heroes for sniping and things like that. I was actually going to play with some things on Scroll Builder and see if I could make that list a little sexier. I think that the Plague Monks aren't quite the way to go. I don't really like Plague Monks that much. They're okay if you play pure Pestilence, but they have bravery problems. They have problems bringing their numbers to bear. You end up with way too many deployments if you bring them as multiple small units. So I think that a different way to go would be to have the Skitter Elite package and the Gutter Runners to kind of do some sneaky stuff, but then also a harder line of maybe like some monsters or some rat ogres or warp fiends, something like that that really has some more meat to it, and then get something in there maybe a little more cheeky, like put Sail in there, the old Sail. The old Sail Warp Fiend combo, because you don't get any bonuses for playing pure Skaven, so you might as well buff up the list as much as you can. And then you already have the battle line with the clan rats, so you don't really need to put more units on the table. So I think it could have been definitely buffed up with some more meat in that army, but his game plan was good. Made a really huge mistake putting the general with the Warp Grinder team. That made it so that Lord of War was useless, and Lord of War is fantastic on Plague Monks, so that's a really big bonus to lose. And then also couldn't give them Inspiring Presence from the general either, which is extremely important because they have terrible bravery and no armor saves, and it's a 40-man unit, so they can go, they can just explode if you put enough wounds into them. Really unfortunate that the Warp Grinder team didn't end up showing up until so late in the game, if you did watch the battle report. But I think the overall game plan that my opponent, this game opponent, had was a good one. He basically told me that the next time we played, he was going to try to counter me as much as he could, because I beat him pretty badly when he was playing pure Nurgle, although that was actually a fun game because Plague Bears plus Cunning Deceiver is not very fun against Arrow Boys, hitting on 6s at best. So yeah, he did his best. Had the assassination on the big boss gone a different way on turn 1, could have been a very different game. Had the assassination gone off and the Plague Monks came up from the Warp Grinder team, even if they didn't get the charge, I think that was his path to victory, because then I just have so many targets to deal with. I still have to think about the scenarios, because in Border War you can score on turn 1, which can be really bad. It'd just be so many targets I have to deal with, and I losing half my offense from the big boss. That's definitely the linchpin of the army, is keeping him alive for at least the first couple turns of the game, so that you can get some work out of him. But luckily that ended up going my way. I think that deploying Snitch might have been a mistake as well. He could have easily jumped in with a character or something like that. He ended up making both of the charges. The Warlock Engineer got into my Orcs on turn 1, and the Arch Warlock got into my Big Boss on turn 2. So, I mean, it is risky, but like I said in my previous battle report, I think when you're behind, when you feel disadvantaged, you have to take risks like that. And you have the advantage of not having to declare if he's going to deploy or not until you think about it. You don't have to put it in your list or anything like that. Same with the Warp Grinder team. You don't have to put a specific unit with it. You can just deploy a unit with it. And the guy who played Skaven actually ended up putting a Clan Rat unit with the Warp Grinder in the second game because of his bad experience with the Plague Monks in the first game. But I believe they ended up getting pounded into the dirt anyways because he was playing against Chaos Dwarves who had two Dreadquake Mortars, and Dreadquake Mortars are devastating against hordes, as I've been on the receiving end a couple times. But yeah, that was a good game. I think I played it very well. Was very proud of my deployment, castling up there, building the perfect bunker. I've actually not deployed like that before. Normally that's something I would do when I used to play 8th edition fantasy. I would do a lot of deployments just to kind of get a feel for them, get a feel for how I can move on the first turn with some terrain, without some terrain, things like that. But I kind of just winged that one, and it ended up working out with the pre-measuring and everything to make sure that the gutter runners could not get to my characters, that the charges would be long, that all of my important targets were going to be well defended, things like that. So it ended up being very helpful that game. And then I was able to make the scenario push on the first turn because my big boss did not go down and the Plague Monks did not show up. So I think, like I said, there's definitely something to that Skaven army. I don't think it's ever going to be one of the best builds in the game. And then obviously Skaven already has a very powerful army. If you take the complete mortal wound spam Clan Skyer Warp Grinder team force, but there's definitely something to Skitterleap. It's a very powerful spell. Deceiver is a very good character with that -2 to be shot. Thunder Tusk are some of the only things in the game that are going to get around that, so normally it would be very difficult to take him out, and if you could get Mystic Shield on him or something like that, he's quite a good beat stick. So if you play Skaven out there, I would definitely recommend tooling around with one of those builds a little bit, see what you can get out of Skitterleap, maybe take some more business, like I said, maybe get like a sail bomb in there, or some plague furnaces, or not plague furnaces, I'm sorry, plague claw catapults, or warp lightning cans, something to help out a little bit, other than marching plague monks across the field to be charged and die, or to be shot to death, or whatever. I think that was definitely the weak part of that particular list, was so many points devoted to those Plague Monk units, which are very difficult to keep around. The second game was a lot more sloppy by my opponent. I think that Seraphon list is kind of all over the place. The Shadow Strike Battalion is pretty good, but I think if you're going to go into that, you need to take 6 Ripperdactyls. I believe they can go into a 6-man unit. I don't have the General's Handbook in front of me, but if they can go into 6, then 6 is the way to go, I think. And then I would probably go with 2 units of Skinks. I actually think Skinks are fantastic. They aren't good at killing things, but because they can retreat from combat, they're fantastic screens. So you'll lose one unit generally, but then you can retreat with another. So if you take 2 units of them, you can kind of trade off like that, and it can be very frustrating for some armies to get through that. So I would definitely recommend that over Chameleon Skinks. Chameleon Skinks they're cute for maybe sniping like a wizard. They generally don't do much into combat heroes, and they can kill war machines pretty decently, but I think they're a little expensive for all that, especially with the state of the game not being like war machine heavy, and a lot of the wizards that see play in the game are like monsters, like Lords of Change and things like that. So they're kind of low on great targets. The biggest mistake of the game that my opponent made was putting so many units onto that left objective. Like, even though I feigned going over there a little bit with my orc unit, as I showed in the battle report, I was never going to commit over there, and even if my bluff worked, it's only 10 models. Like, it's 10 models that aren't very defensive. He could have wiped them out pretty easily if I actually decided to seriously go over there, just pivoted some guns over there or something like that. So I think he was just focusing too much on camping that objective, and he ended up doing nothing with the Sunblood all game, nothing with the Saurus Warriors all game, and very little with the Chameleon Skinks as well, and they're a unit that's great for mobility and putting them where you need to put them. So I got to ignore a significant portion of the Seraphon army for nothing. He just sat there and scored his 1 point and did whatever. And he really needed those Saurus warriors to get into the game. They're not the fightiest things around, but they're not terrible in combat either. And the Sunblood is great. Sunblood is very good at either character killing um, or horde killing. I actually think that a lot of the strength of the Seraphon army is in their characters. Carnosaur is very powerful. Sunbloods are good. Things like that. So if he went with some cheaper battle line and had some more powerful heroes, that is one possible build. Also, he took the Celestial Hurricanum with the Kurnoth Hunters. That's a very well-known package. I believe like a Celestial Hurricanum Max Kurnoth Hunters spam list won a tournament using like Fire Slayers for battle line. So I think taking another unit of 3 Kurnoth Hunters with bows would have been a really good thing to do. I much prefer that over like a Bastillodon or anything. Bastillodons are great against some armies because with Arcane Shield they have 2+ armor save, ignoring all rend, and then a 4+ mortal wound save. The problem is there's no way to heal them, and they don't. Oh, outside of the battalion, the Thunderquake battalion, and they don't put out that much damage. The laser is only really good against the demons, which is not the most common matchup right now, and it's not particularly good in combat either. It's not particularly fast, so it's a tank that you can just sort of ignore. So not too much power in those either. I was really surprised by the salamanders. I think there's more to those than people probably let on. They do only have a single shot, 3s and 3s, but if you have a Hurricanum, like my opponent did, it's 2s and 3s, which is pretty good, and they don't have bad range with the handlers. They aren't too expensive either, so they're a nice little package. I'm actually kind of a fan of Salamanders. D6 wounds with a good rend is very potent, if assuming you don't flub those damage rolls. So I was a little surprised by those. He did make my opponent did make an order of activation error with them when he was trying to take out my Thunder Tusk. He actually shot them last, I think, and by then I'd already taken quite a few wounds. Probably should have led with them, just because I think I got a 6+ save against them. I believe they're Rem -2, and they could just kill the Thunder Tusks themselves. But even if they don't, he can kind of adjust the amount of attacks he puts into it from there, and he ended up not doing that, so he wasted probably some shooting that he badly needed at that point, since I was advancing so quickly onto him. But yeah, like I said, that game essentially came down to too many points hanging out into the corner, too many points hanging out into the objective. I actually wrote an article about that on my blog, which you can find linked in the video description of this video, about how important scenario is in Age of Sigmar, and how you have to think about it when building an army. So my Skaven opponent did think about that. He had the Clan Rats, very cheap, unit to just sit on some objectives. If your opponent shoots them, cool. Hopefully your army is doing other things at that point. But the Seraphon army did not really have a unit that can just go hang on an objective and do nothing. Chameleon Skinks, regular Skinks, kind of like that. I think regular Skinks are actually probably the best that Seraphon has for that job, but through deployment errors and also some army composition decisions, didn't end up having the ability to put those units where they needed to go. Had he done the deployment over again, or had I deployed his army, I think I would have put the Chameleon Skinks onto one objective, the regular Skinks onto the other objective, and the Saurus blocks into the middle. They don't have very good armor saves, so they're likely to get kind of shot down by my arrows, but they might be able to get into something and do some damage before they go down, as opposed to just standing over there in the corner. Once I saw that those units were not going to move from the left objective, I essentially treated them as though they were already dead, and got to fight, 3/4 of my opponent's army with my full army, which was awesome. And then even the 10-man Saurus block didn't end up doing anything. It just beelined it for the objective. Sometimes in the scenario, in scenarios you have to know when to go for the objectives right away and when to prioritize fighting and then going for the objective. I see a lot of people just go straight for the objectives and then their opponents punch them in the mouth, and then they claim the objectives and then they didn't take any losses. So that's you're really on the back foot when that happens. That's generally my plan is to not go for the objectives early. I'll typically take a deficit on turns 1 and 2 in order to not risk the important parts of my army and kill what I need to kill from my opponent's army, and then I'll use the last turns of the game to make up that deficit. And then certain scenarios are great for that because um, it's most numbers on an objective, so you can guarantee that if you've killed enough of your opponent's army, things like that make it very low risk as far as recovering. But yeah, those are kind of the highlights that I noticed from the games. So a little bit of sloppy play from my opponents, more than I would have preferred, and I definitely felt advantaged into both matchups. A little bit of hesitancy turn 1 against the Skaven player because there was a lot of variables floating around in that game, but it ended up going my way, which was good. So that was fantastic. And unfortunately, there were two other tournaments that day for Age of Sigmar in my local area. Just a weird scheduling thing. So probably won't be any more tournaments for me until next month, which is going to be a very busy month because if you are a pure Age of Sigmar player, 40K is bringing out their new edition, and I will be jumping into that game as well with Orcs, Tides of Destruction through and through. So I will be doing 40K and Age of Sigmar battle reports, as well as going to 40K and Age of Sigmar tournaments. So if you like both games, hopefully I'll be able to bring you some more content, and I will probably be doing one video a week, hopefully at least one battle report a week, and then also one kind of musings video a week, just talking about something about the game that I think is interesting, or breaking down a faction or an army or something like that. We'll see what strikes my fancy. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the battle reports and then my kind of rambling discussion about the games, getting into in depth with them a little bit. I will try to continue improving my videos. So as always, if you have any comments or criticism, please do leave them for me. I do read that stuff and take it very seriously because I want to make sure I'm putting out good videos that are enjoyable to watch. So thank you, and see you next time.